For 12 long years, Elena Cross lived a life that seemed ordinary to anyone who knew her. She taught at a small regional airport, instructing young pilots on the basics of flying. To the outside world, she was just another flight instructor, quiet, professional, and unassuming. But beneath her calm exterior was a past that few could even imagine. She had once been one of the best fighter pilots in the world, a Top Gun ace whose name had been whispered with respect in military circles. That life, full of danger, adrenaline, and daring missions, was now a secret she kept buried. She had hidden it not out of shame, but out of necessity. The world she had left behind had a way of catching up to people like her, and she wasn't willing to risk it, touching her now peaceful life. Elena's days were structured carefully, almost like a routine she had built to protect herself. She would wake up early, check weather reports, and spend hours in the simulator, fine-tuning her students' skills. She loved teaching, yes, but part of her enjoyed seeing the excitement in young pilots' eyes when they realized what they were capable of. That excitement reminded her of herself, years ago, when she had climbed into the cockpit for her first real mission, feeling the rush of the wind, the roar of the engine, and the knowledge that every decision she made could mean life or death. Those memories were vivid, and though she had tried to push them away, they never truly left her. Even as she lived a quiet life, she never stopped training. Elena would sometimes slip into the cockpit alone, testing her reflexes, practicing maneuvers she hadn't used in years, feeling the familiar rhythm of controlling an aircraft at top speed. No one knew about these sessions. They were her secret, her way of staying sharp. Deep down, she understood that her past might one day demand her attention again. Being the best didn't just vanish with time. It lingered, waiting for the moment it might be needed. She had carefully crafted a network of acquaintances who knew nothing of her previous life. Her neighbors assumed she was a dedicated instructor. Her colleagues respected her quiet confidence. But no one guessed that the woman who corrected a student's banking angle or guided them through takeoff had once faced life and death battles hundreds of feet in the air. She had flown missions that were classified, encountered enemies who would have destroyed her in an instant, and made split-second decisions that saved lives. Those experiences had changed her forever, yet she carried them silently, like a hidden scar. Sometimes, at night, Elena would stare out of her small apartment window at the planes in the distance and feel a pang of longing. Not for the chaos of battle or the danger itself, but for the feeling of being truly alive, completely in control and fully tested. Teaching was rewarding, but it couldn't replicate the intensity of real combat, the way every second demanded perfection. She remembered the roar of the engines, the smell of fuel, the way the sun glinted off the metal of her fighter jet, as she executed maneuvers that few others could even imagine. Those were moments of clarity and purpose, where hesitation meant nothing and instinct guided every movement. Her past wasn't just a collection of memories. It was also a set of skills that she knew would never leave her. Reflexes, precision, strategic thinking, all were honed to perfection over years of rigorous training. She kept them sharp, quietly, through personal exercises and simulations. Elena understood that being a Top Gun pilot wasn't just about flying. It was about thinking, predicting, and acting faster than anyone else in the sky. Even though she had spent over a decade away from missions, she had not let herself grow soft or forget the lessons she had learned. Yet, there was always an underlying fear. Elena had hidden her past for 12 years not only to avoid recognition but also to protect herself and those close to her. In her line of work, enemies sometimes sought revenge or exploited knowledge for personal gain. By remaining unnoticed, she minimized the risk. It was a delicate balance, being skilled enough to survive if danger appeared, but invisible enough that no one would suspect the danger existed. Her entire life had become a careful act of concealment, like walking on a tightrope without ever letting anyone know she was balancing above a void. Despite the quiet years, Elena's mind never fully rested. She read military reports, followed news about global conflicts, and occasionally helped former colleagues with advice, always under the radar. She stayed connected in a way that allowed her to remain prepared without exposing herself. Life had slowed down, but the fighter within her never had. And though she was content on the surface, She could not ignore the gnawing feeling that her hidden past, her Top Gun history, might one day demand her attention. Little did she know that the peace she had built, the life she had carefully hidden behind, was about to be shattered. Someone from her past, someone who knew the secrets she had kept for 12 years, was about to resurface. And when that happened, Elena would have no choice but to return to the skies, to the skill and courage that had made her legendary. Until that moment, however, she lived quietly, skillfully masking the extraordinary life beneath her calm exterior. Life had settled into a steady rhythm for Elena Cross, but beneath the calm, her instincts were never truly at rest. Every day, she followed the routines she had built for herself, arriving at the small regional airport, checking weather reports, guiding students through takeoffs and landings, and monitoring their progress in the simulator. To anyone watching, she seemed completely ordinary, even predictable. But Elena's mind was always alert, scanning for anything that could disrupt the fragile balance she had carefully maintained. She had learned long ago that the world was never completely safe, and a split second of carelessness could change everything. Even though she had left active combat behind, she remained deeply connected to the military world in subtle ways. She kept up with global events, reading news about military operations, studying tactical developments, and occasionally following reports on aviation innovations. It was more than curiosity, it was a habit, a way to keep her mind sharp. Sometimes, when she was alone in the cockpit after her students had left, she would run through exercises in her mind or in the simulator. She pushed herself through high-speed maneuvers, emergency protocols, and impossible aerial stunts. Her body still remembered the feel of the controls, the precise timing required for a perfect barrel roll, or the split-second decisions needed to evade an enemy. On one particular afternoon, a student named Alex, eager and ambitious, was practicing his first advanced maneuvers under her guidance. Elena watched him closely, correcting small mistakes, but allowing him to gain confidence. She noticed how he struggled to control the aircraft during a sharp turn and instinctively moved to guide him. Without thinking, she took the controls for a split second, performing the maneuver herself flawlessly, and then returned the controls to him. Alex's eyes widened, and he whispered, "Wow, how did you do that?" Elena smiled quietly, brushing it off as simple experience, but inside, she felt a surge of something she hadn't felt in years. The thrill of mastery, the joy of flying perfectly, the power of knowing she was still capable of extraordinary things. That feeling, though brief, reminded her that the life she had left behind was never truly gone. Her Top Gun training, her missions, her past victories, they were all part of her, etched into her body and mind. Even after 12 years of hiding, she could still move with precision, react instantly, and make decisions under pressure. It was a skill set that could not be taught or forgotten. It was instinct, honed to perfection over years of intense training and dangerous missions. For Elena, this realization was both comforting and unsettling. She had spent over a decade believing she could live quietly, but a small part of her knew that the past was waiting, lurking just beyond the horizon. That evening, after the students had left and the airport was quiet, Elena reviewed some old flight manuals and tactical notes she had kept hidden in a small, locked cabinet. She ran through mission scenarios in her mind, imagining herself in impossible situations, calculating every move, every reaction. It was almost meditative, a way to maintain her edge. She knew that one day her skills might be needed again, though she hoped that day would never come. She had built a life of peace, and the thought of returning to high-risk missions filled her with both excitement and dread. As she stared out at the darkening sky, a nagging feeling crept over her. Something didn't feel right. In her years of experience, Elena had learned to trust her instincts, and right now, they were alerting her to an unseen danger. She couldn't shake the sense that someone was watching, someone who knew her past, someone who might want to challenge her. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She tried to dismiss it as imagination, but deep down, she knew that the world rarely allowed a legend to remain hidden forever. The following days brought subtle signs that reinforced her unease. She noticed unusual activity in her neighborhood. Vehicles she didn't recognize, people asking odd questions about the airport, and hints that someone was gathering information about her schedule. At first, she considered it coincidence, but the pattern became too consistent to ignore. Elena realized that her past, the life she had kept secret for 12 years, was beginning to intrude into her present. Someone from that world had found her, and they had motives that were unclear but undoubtedly dangerous. Despite the tension, Elena remained composed. She knew panic would only make her vulnerable. Instead, she focused on preparation, going over emergency procedures, checking her equipment, and reviewing strategies she had learned during her Top Gun training. She practiced maneuvers she hadn't executed in years, each one sharpening her reflexes, each one reminding her that she was still the same pilot who had once faced impossible odds and come out victorious. It was a bittersweet reminder that her peace was fragile, and her past was a force she could never fully escape. By the end of the week, Elena had made a silent decision. She would no longer ignore the signs. If her past was reaching out to her, she would face it head-on. The quiet life she had built was no longer guaranteed. Someone was coming, and they were coming with a purpose. And although she hoped to avoid conflict, she knew that if the moment arrived, she would have to be ready to return to the skies, to reclaim the skills she had kept hidden, and to confront whatever threat was approaching with the full force of her experience and training. For now, she watched the sunset from the cockpit. The sky painted in shades of orange and purple, feeling both anticipation and a sense of inevitability. Her peaceful life was coming to an end, and the adventure, danger, and heroism she had buried 12 years ago were about to return. She didn't know when, she didn't know how, but she knew one thing. When the time came, she would be ready. Elena had always known that her past could catch up with her, but she had hoped that 12 years of careful hiding would keep her safe. For over a decade, she had lived a life free of danger, teaching young pilots and blending into the world of civilian aviation. She had thought that leaving her Top Gun days behind would mean leaving the risks behind as well. But sometimes the past has a way of finding people no matter how far they run, and Elena was about to be reminded of that in the most dangerous way. It started with subtle signs. Files she had thought destroyed were quietly resurfacing, and intelligence reports indicated that a former colleague, someone she had trusted, had turned rogue. This person had access to sensitive military information and knew her history as a Top Gun pilot. Elena realized that her past, which she had worked so hard to conceal, was no longer just a memory. It was a target. The rogue operative had discovered that she was still alive, still skilled, and still capable of extraordinary feats, and they intended to exploit that knowledge. At first, she struggled to accept the reality. The idea that someone could threaten her life and the lives of those she cared about, using her own history against her, was overwhelming. She replayed memories in her mind, remembering missions where betrayal had always been a possibility, and how she had learned to rely on instinct, quick thinking, and precise skill to survive. This time, however, the threat was different. It was personal. It wasn't just about flying or completing a mission. It was about defending herself in a world she thought she had left behind. Elena began to take the threat seriously. She reached out to a few trusted contacts in the military, discreetly asking questions and gathering intelligence. Every detail she uncovered painted a picture of a highly skilled and dangerous adversary. This rogue operative had not only turned against the organization they once served, but had also gained access to classified plans that could wreak havoc if used against the wrong people. The realization sent a chill down Elena's spine. She was not just facing an enemy. She was facing someone who knew exactly how she thought, how she operated, and what she was capable of. As the days passed, Elena noticed more evidence that the rogue operative was closing in. There were subtle surveillance attempts near the airport, unusual activity in nearby airspace, and even cryptic messages intended to intimidate her. Each sign reinforced the truth that her peaceful life had ended. The rogue operative wanted to force her back into a world of danger she had carefully avoided for 12 years. It wasn't a threat she could ignore. Elena understood that she had no choice but to respond, and that response would require the full extent of her training and skills. Despite the fear, Elena felt a familiar surge of determination. She had faced impossible odds before, survived battles that seemed unwinnable, and outsmarted enemies who underestimated her. This situation was different, more personal, but the same principles applied. She needed strategy, speed, and precision. She began preparing methodically, reviewing old mission plans, practicing high-intensity maneuvers in the simulator, and mentally rehearsing scenarios she had once encountered in real combat. Every reflex, every decision-making pattern, and every tactical instinct from her Top Gun days came flooding back. It was as if the years of civilian life had never dulled her abilities. Elena also realized that this wasn't just a battle in the skies. It was a game of strategy and intellect. The rogue operative had studied her, anticipated her moves, and planned attacks that exploited her hidden past. To counter that, she had to anticipate their strategy before it happened, staying one step ahead at all times. She spent hours mapping possible routes, escape plans, and counterattacks, using every resource available to her. It was exhausting but necessary. Elena knew that a single mistake could have catastrophic consequences, not just for herself, but for countless others. Emotionally, the situation was draining. Elena had grown accustomed to her quiet, structured life, and now that world was slipping away. Yet, there was a part of her that felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. The adrenaline, the high stakes, the sense of purpose. It reminded her of why she had become a Top Gun pilot in the first place. This was not something she had chosen lightly, but deep down, she understood that her skills had been preserved for this very moment. She could no longer hide, and perhaps she never truly wanted to. Elena's preparation also involved gathering allies she could trust, but cautiously. She reached out only to a few individuals who had proven themselves loyal over the years, carefully explaining the threat without revealing unnecessary details. Together, they began developing a plan, not just to protect her, but to stop the rogue operative before irreparable damage could occur. Every decision had to be calculated. Every move had to be precise. There was no room for error. By the end of this phase, Elena knew one thing for certain. The peaceful life she had created for herself was over. Her past was no longer a secret. It was a weapon that someone else sought to use. The rogue operative had forced her hand, and there was no turning back. She would have to step back into the world she thought she had left behind, drawing on every skill, every lesson, and every instinct she had acquired as a Top Gun pilot. And when that moment came, she would need to face not only a dangerous enemy, but also the truths about herself that she had buried for more than a decade. Elena knew the time for hesitation was over. The rogue operative had revealed themselves, and every sign pointed to danger that could no longer be ignored. For 12 years, she had lived quietly, hiding her Top Gun history, teaching young pilots the basics of flight, and blending into a life that felt safe. But that safety was gone now. The world she had left behind, the high-speed maneuvers, life-or-death decisions, and the constant adrenaline of combat, was calling her back. She had no choice but to answer. Her first step was to return to active duty, though it was not simple. Elena had been away from missions for more than a decade, and she knew that the systems, protocols, and even some technology had changed. But she also knew that her skill, honed over years of rigorous training and real combat experience, was timeless. She began by dusting off her old flight manuals, reviewing mission reports she had saved, and familiarizing herself with new aircraft technology. Every page, every diagram, every checklist reminded her that she had been preparing for this moment long before the threat appeared. Physically, she had to recondition herself. Her body remembered the intense strain of high-G maneuvers, but muscles and reflexes atrophy without constant use. She spent hours in the gym, running drills, stretching, and practicing aerial maneuvers in the simulator. Her movements were precise, almost instinctive, and she was reminded again why she had once been one of the most feared pilots in the sky. This training wasn't just about fitness. It was about readiness. She knew that when the rogue operative finally made a move, there would be no second chances, and she had to be sharper than ever. Mentally, Elena prepared herself in a different way. She reviewed strategic plans, thought through every possible scenario, and anticipated the moves her adversary might make. The rogue operative knew her history and likely expected her to hesitate, to struggle with the transition from a quiet life back to combat. But Elena had learned long ago that hesitation in the air could cost lives. She forced herself to focus, to imagine herself in the cockpit under extreme pressure, and to practice split-second decision-making. It was like a mental rehearsal, building the reflexes that would guide her when it mattered most. The day finally came when she returned to the skies. Sliding into the cockpit of a modern fighter jet, she felt a familiar thrill. The hum of the engine, the vibration of the controls, the smell of fuel. All of it brought back memories she had long tried to forget. Yet this time, there was a difference. She was no longer a young pilot learning her limits. She was Elena Cross, a veteran with experience, strategy, and a lifetime of skill. Every instinct, every reflex she had honed over countless missions was alive and ready. Her first mission back was reconnaissance, testing the airspace for any signs of the rogue operative. Flying at high altitudes, she monitored radar signals, navigated through complex flight patterns, and stayed alert for anything unusual. Every movement, every calculation, required precision. She felt the thrill of control, of moving at impossible speeds, and the focus that had defined her Top Gun days returned stronger than ever. Despite the danger, there was a part of her that reveled in it, the knowledge that she was once again operating at the peak of her abilities. Back on the ground, she debriefed herself, analyzing every turn, every speed change, and every potential weakness. She realized that returning to action was not just about skill, it was about mindset. The rogue operative was clever, but Elena knew that her experience gave her an edge. While younger or less experienced pilots might be reactive, she could anticipate, plan, and control the flow of the engagement. This confidence gave her strength, even as the danger loomed closer. Elena also prepared emotionally. She knew the rogue operative would try to exploit not only her skills but her emotions. They might attempt to manipulate fear, doubt, or hesitation, knowing that a pilot who wavered could be defeated. She practiced discipline, controlling her thoughts, keeping fear in check, and using it as a tool rather than a weakness. Every heartbeat, every breath, every calculation in the cockpit had to be precise, because hesitation could mean disaster. At the same time, she quietly gathered a small team of trusted allies, people who knew enough about her history to support her, but not enough to risk exposure. Together, they coordinated surveillance, communication protocols, and backup strategies. Elena knew that she could not face the rogue operative entirely alone. She also knew that secrecy was vital. Too many people aware of her past would increase the risk of leaks, which the enemy could exploit. Planning, coordination, and trust became as important as her flying skills. As she prepared for the inevitable confrontation, Elena reflected on what had brought her to this point. The quiet years, the hidden life, the careful concealment, they had been necessary, but now they were over. The rogue operative had forced her hand, and she had no choice but to step back into the world of danger, adrenaline, and high-stakes combat. Every moment of preparation, every hour of simulation, and every memory from her Top Gun days had been leading to this moment. She was ready, not just to survive, but to triumph. By the end of this stage, Elena understood that returning to action was about more than flying. It was about reclaiming her identity, embracing her skills, and confronting a threat that was both external and personal. She knew that the rogue operative would not wait, and that the first encounter could be decisive. The calm life she had built was gone, but in its place, her true strength, the strength that had always defined her, was rising. The battle was about to begin, and Elena Cross was prepared to face it head-on. Elena had prepared for this moment for days, yet nothing could truly replicate the reality of a high-stakes aerial pursuit. The rogue operative was out there, somewhere in the sky, moving fast, calculating every maneuver, and relying on the fact that Elena had been away from combat for over a decade. But she had trained her mind and body for exactly this type of situation. Sliding into the cockpit, she felt the familiar hum of the jet beneath her and the vibrations through the controls. Her hands moved almost instinctively, her eyes scanning the horizon, and her reflexes sharpened as though no time had passed at all. The mission was simple in concept but incredibly difficult in execution. Locate the rogue operative, prevent them from executing their plan, and stop them without collateral damage. The rogue was clever, leaving a trail that was just enough to be followed but designed to mislead. Elena's experience gave her the edge. She could read patterns, predict moves, and anticipate the enemy's strategy in ways that less experienced pilots could not. Her heart raced, but it wasn't fear, it was focus. She had done this before, and she knew she could do it again. As she ascended to high altitude, the wind rushing past, she began to track the operative's path on her radar. Small blips appeared intermittently, sometimes too far away to confirm, sometimes disappearing entirely. Each disappearance forced her to calculate new routes, predict likely moves, and adjust her speed. She remembered long ago missions in which a single misjudgment had led to disaster. This time, however, she was not just flying for herself. She was flying to protect her team, her country, and even the life she had tried to protect for the past 12 years. Every decision carried weight, and every second mattered. The rogue operative wasn't just a skilled pilot, they were unpredictable. Elena had to adapt constantly, weaving through air currents, adjusting her angles, and performing maneuvers that required perfect timing and precision. The sky became a battlefield, an invisible chessboard where each move could mean victory or defeat. Elena's training kicked in fully. She rolled, banked, and climbed with fluidity, making maneuvers that would have been textbook in a Top Gun simulation. But in this case, every move had real consequences. Time seemed to stretch and compress all at once. Moments lasted seconds, yet each second carried the tension of hours. Elena was fully immersed, every sense heightened. She could feel the jet respond beneath her, hear the subtle changes in engine pitch, sense turbulence before it hit, and see the faintest movements on the radar. The rogue operative was testing her, trying to bait her into mistakes. But Elena was not just reacting. She was anticipating, staying a step ahead at all times. At one point, the rogue operative attempted a sudden vertical climb, a move designed to shake any pursuer. Elena anticipated it and adjusted instantly, following the trajectory with split-second timing. Her jet shuddered under the strain, but she held steady, executing the maneuver with precision. It was a reminder of why she had been Top Gun. Her instincts were honed for these exact moments. The rogue had expected hesitation, but Elena gave none. She matched every move, countered every tactic, and remained focused on the ultimate goal, stopping the threat. As the chase continued, Elena realized this battle was more than just a physical test. It was mental. The rogue operative had knowledge of her past, and every maneuver she made had to account for that. She considered what they expected her to do, then deliberately acted in ways that disrupted their predictions. She had learned long ago that in aerial combat, the mind could be as important as skill. By staying unpredictable, she maintained control of the engagement. Despite the intensity, Elena remained aware of her surroundings. The terrain below, the positions of nearby aircraft, and potential hazards all demanded attention. One wrong move could not only jeopardize the mission but also endanger innocent lives. She carefully calculated her altitude, speed, and trajectory, using every ounce of knowledge she had accumulated over years of flying. Her heart pounded, adrenaline surged, but she felt no fear. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. Only precision mattered. Hours seemed to pass in minutes, as the aerial battle unfolded with relentless intensity. Elena executed high-speed dives, sharp turns, and rapid climbs, each maneuver designed to keep the rogue operative off balance. She tested every limit of her aircraft, every skill she had practiced in the simulator, and every instinct honed over her years as a Top Gun pilot. The rogue operative, skilled as they were, began to show signs of strain, their moves growing slightly less precise, their strategy revealing small cracks. Elena sensed the opportunity. Finally, after a tense series of maneuvers, Elena was in a position to confront the rogue operative directly. She aligned her aircraft carefully, approaching with calculated speed and precision. The chase that had dominated the skies for hours was coming to a critical moment. Elena's mind was sharp, her instincts precise, and her determination unshakable. She knew this confrontation would define the outcome of the mission, and she was ready to use every skill, every trick, and every ounce of experience she had to ensure success. The battle in the sky was far from over, but in this moment, Elena realized something crucial. She was back. The Top Gun pilot who had hidden for 12 years was alive, alert, and unstoppable. The rogue operative may have been clever and dangerous, but Elena's experience, skill, and determination gave her the edge. The chase was intense, the stakes higher than ever, but she was ready. And she knew that in the moments to come, she would prove why she had been one of the best pilots in the world, and why her past, hidden for so long, could never be erased. Elena had faced many challenges in her life, but nothing had prepared her for the sting of betrayal. She had been flying at top speed, her focus entirely on the rogue operative she was pursuing, when a chilling realization struck her. Someone close to her had leaked information about her past, someone she had trusted completely. The knowledge of her Top Gun history, carefully hidden for 12 years, was now in the hands of the enemy. The betrayal cut deeper than any maneuver, any dive, or any battle she had faced in the air. It was personal, and it threatened not only her mission but the life she had painstakingly built since leaving the combat zone. At first, Elena felt a surge of disbelief. How could someone she had considered a friend or ally turn against her? She replayed interactions in her mind, looking for clues she might have missed, wondering if there had been signs of deceit. The questions raced through her head. Had they always intended to betray her? Or had they been manipulated by the rogue operative? Was it a simple mistake or something more sinister? Every possibility seemed worse than the last. The feeling of trust, once so natural, was shattered, leaving her with a cold, sharp awareness that she could rely only on herself. Despite the emotional weight, Elena could not afford to falter. Her mind, trained through years of high-pressure missions, quickly switched from shock to strategy. She reminded herself that in combat, emotions could be dangerous if they clouded judgment. She focused on what mattered most: stopping the rogue operative, protecting innocent lives, and preventing any further damage from the betrayal. The personal betrayal, though painful, became fuel for her determination. She realized that if she allowed anger or hurt to distract her, she would give her adversary an advantage she could not afford. The revelation of the betrayal added a new layer of complexity to her mission. She now had to consider not only the rogue operative's skill but also the insider knowledge that had been leaked. Every maneuver she had anticipated, every prediction she had made about the enemy's behavior, now had to be reevaluated. Elena spent hours analyzing patterns, recalculating strategies, and preparing for every possibility. She relied on her experience, her instinct, and the deep well of training she had accumulated over years. Her mind became a battlefield itself, filled with calculations, contingencies, and careful considerations of trust and risk. Emotionally, the situation was exhausting. Elena had spent years hiding her past to protect herself, and now it was being used as a weapon against her. She felt a mixture of anger, hurt, and determination. The rogue operative was dangerous, but the betrayal made her mission intensely personal. Every move she made, every decision she took, was now infused with a sense of justice. She realized that this confrontation was about more than stopping a threat. It was about reclaiming control over her own life, her legacy, and her identity. Despite the emotional turmoil, Elena remained composed on the surface. She continued to train, to rehearse maneuvers, and to plan her engagement with the rogue operative. Her hands moved with precision, her eyes scanned every radar blip, and her mind anticipated the enemy's next moves. She had learned to compartmentalize emotions in high-pressure situations, using them as fuel rather than allowing them to distract her. The betrayal, while painful, sharpened her focus. Every time she thought of the friend who had turned against her, her determination grew stronger. Elena also had to consider the security of her team. She could not fully trust anyone, knowing that information could leak again. She became more cautious, implementing stricter communication protocols, double-checking surveillance, and carefully monitoring all operations. The betrayal had changed the rules of engagement. She could no longer rely solely on standard procedures. She had to anticipate deception at every turn, not just from the rogue operative, but from anyone who might have ulterior motives. As she prepared for the next phase of the mission, Elena realized the stakes had grown higher than ever. The rogue operative was not just skilled and dangerous. They now had allies, insiders who could anticipate her moves. But Elena had something they did not: experience, instinct, and the unshakable will of someone who had survived countless impossible situations. Her past, which had once been hidden, was now fully alive within her, guiding her every action, giving her an edge over those who underestimated her. The betrayal forced Elena to confront more than just the rogue operative. It forced her to confront her own assumptions about trust, loyalty, and the people she had allowed close to her. It was a harsh lesson, but one she needed to learn to succeed. She understood that, in this battle, emotional clarity was as important as technical skill. By recognizing the betrayal without letting it control her, she became stronger, more resilient, and more dangerous than ever. In the end, Elena transformed the shock of betrayal into action. She redoubled her efforts, refining strategies, practicing maneuvers, and preparing for the moment when she would face the rogue operative directly. The emotional pain became fuel, her focus sharpened, and her determination solidified. She knew the confrontation ahead would test her limits, but she also knew that she had survived worse. The betrayal had added a personal dimension to the mission, making it not only a fight for justice but also a fight to reclaim her life, her identity, and the hidden strength she had preserved for 12 long years. The sky was a vast battlefield, stretching endlessly in all directions, and Elena Cross knew that the moment of truth had finally arrived. After days of preparation, training, and careful planning, she was about to face the rogue operative head-on. Every detail of the chase had led to this mid-air confrontation. Her heart raced, but it was not fear, it was focus. The years of hiding her Top Gun history, the betrayal she had endured, and the months of preparation had all built up to this single moment. The adrenaline surged through her, sharpening her senses to a razor edge. The rogue operative appeared on the radar as a faint blip, quickly growing larger as they maneuvered through the sky. They were skilled, matching her speed, and anticipating her every movement. But Elena had something her adversary could not account for. 12 years of experience, instinct honed through impossible situations, and the unshakable confidence of a pilot who had once been the best in the world. She moved with precision, banking, diving, and climbing in perfect rhythm with her aircraft, her mind calculating every possibility. Every maneuver was deliberate, every adjustment planned to outwit the enemy. The engagement quickly escalated into a breathtaking display of aerial skill. Elena weaved through clouds, using the terrain to her advantage, and performed high-speed rolls that tested both the limits of her jet and her own reflexes. The rogue operative tried to force her into a mistake, attempting aggressive climbs and unpredictable dives, but Elena anticipated each one. She had trained for years in situations like this, and her body remembered every maneuver. Muscle memory guided her hands, instinct guided her eyes, and strategy guided her mind. She was not just reacting, she was controlling the battle. Time became a strange concept as the chase intensified. Seconds felt like minutes and minutes like hours. Every moment was a test of endurance, skill, and concentration. Elena could feel the jet respond to her commands with perfect precision, the roar of the engines echoing in her ears, and the wind rushing past as if challenging her. She was fully immersed in the battle, every sense alive, every reflex honed. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and intoxicating all at once. She felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that had defined her Top Gun days, but now it was coupled with the determination born of personal stakes, the betrayal, the threat, and the need to protect her legacy. The rogue operative made a sudden, daring maneuver, banking sharply and climbing vertically in an attempt to shake her pursuit. Elena anticipated the move, executing a countermaneuver that required split-second timing and perfect control. Her jet responded flawlessly, and she remained on target. The operative, confident in their own skill, had underestimated her resilience. Elena's mind raced as she adjusted her trajectory, calculated wind currents, and prepared for the next move. She had learned long ago that in aerial combat, the slightest hesitation could be fatal, and she refused to give even a fraction of a second to her opponent. Every action had consequences. Elena knew that one wrong move could send her plummeting to the ground or allow the rogue operative to escape. Her calculations were meticulous. Speed, altitude, angle, and timing were all critical. She drew on every lesson from her Top Gun history, from the tiniest adjustments in the cockpit to the largest strategic decisions about positioning and timing. She was not just flying. She was thinking, anticipating, and controlling the battlefield with precision. The mental battle was as intense as the physical one. Elena had to predict the rogue operative's next moves, considering what they expected her to do and deliberately doing something different. She remained unpredictable, keeping them off balance and forcing errors. Each successful maneuver gave her confidence, and each misstep by the enemy widened her advantage. Her emotions, once a potential distraction, became tools. Anger at the betrayal fueled her focus, determination sharpened her reflexes, and the thrill of the chase reminded her of the strength she had always carried. Hours seemed to pass as the aerial duel continued, though in reality it was only minutes. Elena executed a series of maneuvers that would have been impossible for a less experienced pilot. Tight loops, sudden dives, and high-speed climbs that pushed both her and her jet to the limit. The rogue operative, for all their skill, began to show signs of strain. Their movements became slightly less precise, and small errors started to appear. Elena recognized these opportunities instantly and adjusted her tactics, closing the gap and asserting control over the battle. Finally, after a tense series of maneuvers, Elena positioned herself perfectly for a decisive engagement. She approached with calculated speed and precision, leaving no room for mistakes. Every instinct, every calculation, every skill she had honed over the years came into play. The rogue operative realized too late that they had underestimated her. Elena's strategy, skill, and experience had given her the upper hand. With a final, expertly executed maneuver, she neutralized the threat, bringing the aerial confrontation to a stunning conclusion. Breathing heavily in the cockpit, Elena allowed herself a brief moment to absorb what had just happened. The rogue operative was defeated, but more than that, she had reclaimed a part of herself. The hidden Top Gun pilot, the one she had concealed for 12 years, had returned in full force. The battle had tested her physically, mentally, and emotionally, but she had emerged victorious. In that moment, Elena realized something profound. Her past was not a burden. It was her strength, and no one, not even betrayal or danger, could erase it. The sky was quiet now, a stark contrast to the chaos that had dominated the past hours. Elena Cross sat in her cockpit, breathing steadily, the adrenaline slowly fading, but her mind remained alert. The rogue operative had been neutralized, the immediate threat eliminated, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. The mission had been dangerous, intense, and personal, but it had reminded her of something she had long buried: the strength, skill, and courage that had defined her life as a Top Gun pilot. As she guided her jet back toward the base, Elena's thoughts drifted to the 12 years she had spent hiding her past. She had tried to live a quiet, ordinary life, teaching young pilots, blending into civilian life, and keeping her history a secret. Those years had been necessary for safety and peace, but they had also been a time of restraint, a period in which a part of her true self had been confined. Now, after facing the rogue operative, that hidden strength had emerged fully, proving that even after a decade away, she was still a force to be reckoned with. Touching down on the runway, Elena felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. The aircraft slowed beneath her with a gentle rumble, and the familiar hum of engines quieted. She climbed out of the cockpit, stretching her stiff muscles and taking in the crisp air. Around her, the base was busy as usual, but to her, the world felt different. The ordinary life she had returned to, the one she had fought so hard to maintain, now seemed intertwined with her extraordinary past. She understood that she could no longer simply hide who she was. The Top Gun pilot she had once been was not something to bury, it was something to embrace. Elena spent the following hours debriefing and analyzing the mission. Every maneuver, every strategic decision, and every split-second choice was reviewed. She was meticulous, not because she doubted herself, but because she understood the value of learning, even in victory. The rogue operative had been clever, but her preparation, skill, and instincts had allowed her to outmaneuver them. Reflecting on the engagement, she realized that her experience had given her something far greater than skill. It had given her confidence, clarity, and the ability to face any challenge without hesitation. The emotional weight of the past mission lingered. The betrayal she had faced, the personal stakes of the confrontation, and the intensity of the aerial battle had left their mark. Yet, instead of diminishing her, these experiences had strengthened her. She realized that the years she had spent hiding her past had not been wasted. They had shaped her, giving her patience, discipline, and a strategic mind capable of anticipating threats long before they emerged. In a sense, those quiet years had prepared her perfectly for the chaos she had just faced. With the mission complete, Elena began to consider the future. She had proven to herself and to anyone who might doubt her that she was still capable of extraordinary feats. Her hidden past, long kept secret for safety, had been revealed not in words, but through action. She now understood that she could integrate her past and present, using her skills and experience to protect, teach, and inspire. The world had changed, but so had she, and her place within it could now reflect both the calm life she had built and the heroic legacy she had earned. The students at the airport noticed a change in her demeanor over the following days. Elena's confidence was palpable, a quiet strength that radiated without words. While she continued to teach, guiding young pilots through the fundamentals of flight, she also incorporated lessons about strategy, focus, and resilience. Lessons drawn from real combat experience, lessons that few others could offer. Her students began to sense that she was not just an instructor, but someone who had lived extraordinary experiences, someone who had faced the impossible and emerged stronger. Even among her colleagues, Elena's reputation began to shift. Those who had known her only as a quiet, capable instructor now glimpsed the depth of skill and experience she carried. Though she remained modest, it was clear that the woman they worked alongside had a history that demanded respect. She had faced a personal and professional trial, emerged victorious, and reclaimed a part of herself that had been hidden for far too long. The mission had proven not only her capability but her resilience, her courage, and her indomitable spirit. Elena took a quiet moment alone one evening, standing on the tarmac as the sun set. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, stretching endlessly above her. In that moment, she allowed herself to fully embrace who she was. The Top Gun pilot she had once been, the instructor she had become, the woman who had faced betrayal and danger. All of these parts were now one. She no longer had to hide. She had survived, she had triumphed, and she had proven that strength, skill, and courage endure even after years of quiet waiting. The events of the past weeks had changed her. Elena realized that she was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. She had faced impossible odds, confronted betrayal, and neutralized a dangerous enemy. And she had done it all while maintaining the discipline, precision, and clarity that had always defined her. She had reclaimed her legacy, proving to herself that no matter how long she had been away, her skills and courage could never be erased. As night fell, Elena looked up at the stars, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had faced the storm, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. The hidden life of the past 12 years had given way to a life fully lived, a life that embraced both ordinary moments and extraordinary courage. Elena Cross had reclaimed her identity, her legacy, and her rightful place in the skies. She had hidden for 12 years, but now she had returned, and nothing, no betrayal, no danger, no obstacle, could ever take that away.